Okay, so we're now recording. So if you've just joined us, this is Teaching Your Students to Learn and Unlearn with Manal Sabbah. And I'm going to start as well, streaming onto Facebook. And then I'm going to introduce you properly. Okay, so I'm just starting streaming, and just a reminder that if you do have any problems with sound or connectivity, or you want subtitles, then you can always watch on Facebook. That's a good way to join us as well. All right then, so before I pass you over to Manal, let's just tell you a little bit about her. So she has a doctorate in TESOL from the University of Exeter. She is currently the Chief Executive Officer of Excedia, a language learning company. She has over 2 decades of experience in teaching English in higher education internationally. And she has published research on experiential learning theories, assessment, and vocabulary acquisition. So, wow, what a CV, and we're so happy to have you here with us today. I'm here if you need me, Manal, but I'm going to pass over to you. Okay.
Thank you very much, Jo. Thank you. Okay, so we'll share the slides first. I'd like to welcome. I'd like to welcome everyone that joined, and I can see they joined from all over the world. Today, as you see, the topic will be about teaching your students to learn and unlearn. There are a few notes that I would like to make about the topic today. So when I mention learning, this also includes unlearning, because as you will see from the topic we're going to discuss about teaching using experiential learning theories. Experience itself is very important in the classroom, and behind the scenes now, as we were talking, Jo, Melissa, and I, we were talking about how some teachers actually apply these theories by intuition. They don't know what the theories are, but knowing them will systematically help you apply them every time and apply them successfully. Now, we will talk about many topics with regards to learning, how to teach your students to learn and unlearn. This is a roadmap of the webinar, the discussion points that we're going to go through. First, we are going to look at experiential learning theories, an overview, an example, Dewey's theory, and I will mention to you why I chose this example. This is one of the theories that are very important of the experiential learning theories. Using experiential learning theories in your English classroom, why should we use them? Where can we use them? This is the practical bit of the webinar. Practical application. So we're going to discuss a scenario, and I'm going to need your help helping me unstructure this scenario or put the theory into perspective. So let's start by looking first at the concepts. When I say experience, what comes up to your mind? What is an experience for you? And that's a question for everyone. So what's an experience? New things that are not explored before, some feelings, very interesting. What else do you think experience is? situations, something related to the past, but also something you do, new situations. Very interesting answers. Okay, so as I have seen, and everyone that is reading the messages can tell, that some people relate experiences to the past, to something that has happened already. Some people relate them to knowledge. Some people relate them to something that is happening right now. And a lot of you have said that experiences relate to the future, new situations. Now, just to put things into perspective, experiences are actually related to all these times. So to clarify the concept of experience, it is something that is temporal, relates to what we already know in the past, applied to the present, and can affect the future. So an experience, as opposed to event, something that happened or will happen, is different. The experience goes on from the past to the present and affects the future. And we will talk about this in details. So that's an experience. And an experience is also situated, meaning it happens in certain places in the social world with other people. So while we are going through experiences, we deal with other people. So people deal with us. This affects our learning, but it also affects their learning and many other things around us. So experiences are social, they're temporal, they're situated. Now, the concept of learning, as I mentioned at the beginning, includes unlearning. So learning, when I mention the word learning, I also mean unlearning, because unlearning is a part of learning. There are many benefits to using experiential learning theories that we're going to discuss in a few minutes. But before I do that, I'm going to discuss the overview of experiential learning theories. And if you have any questions, please include them in the question and answer session, and I will answer them at the end. So experiential learning theories, an overview. Experiential learning theories, in general, are theories that emphasize that learning happens through an experience. And as I mentioned, an experience is not in the past or the present or the future. It's actually an extended series of events, if you want, that happens from the past to the present and affects the future. Ultimately, people learn through engaging in activities with other people in the sociocultural world, and they affect their environment, and people also affect them. So it's a transaction happening between those people and other people in the real world. How do we learn? How do we gain knowledge? Some of you have said that experience is knowledge. Knowledge is a subset of experience. It's not the experience itself. So knowledge happens when we reflect on what's happening to us in the real world. One of the most famous actually theorists about that have discussed experiential learning theories is Dewey. And some of you are familiar with Dewey and some of you are not. Some people call him the father of experiential learning theories, and this is because he's the one who started this whole thing. You may have read works done by other people on how to do reflection, on how to do transaction, experience, and so on. But John Dewey is one of the fathers of these theories. So how does he view the learner? The learner is an organism that is constantly trying to transact with its environment. And the reason is to keep their balance, to keep them going in the right direction, to be able to advance in their life or learning or whatever they're trying to do. So the first step happens in emotion. People start learning when there is a strong emotion that is being responding to something that has changed in their environment. So this raises a certain emotion in those people, so they need to respond with an action. So usually an uncertain situation happens, resulting from a change in the environment. And we will talk about how this actually happens in the classroom or outside of the classroom. So to keep their balance, people resort to inquiry. They start thinking in a process, how can I resolve this uncertainty? How can I answer this difficult question? How can I understand a new lesson that I find challenging? It all starts in emotions. So then they take action. So sometimes people reflect on the action after they take it, and they change the action. If it works, it works. If it doesn't work, then they have to take other actions. In the process, they affect their learning, but they also affect the environment they are learning in. So these actions can be physical, like touching things, learning things, doing things, or they can be verbal, through speaking, through talking to other people, trying to build their knowledge, asking questions. All these are actions that they take in response to a change in their environment that is challenging to achieve learning. So these actions result in outcomes or consequences. Now, people need to continuously reflect on the consequences or the outcomes, both in experience and after experience, on experience, to gain knowledge. And this is how we derive knowledge from action, from experience. So Dewey's theory, when it comes to outcome, has two possible outcomes. So the outcomes are not always specific, they're emergent outcomes. So more positive outcomes will result and more negative outcomes, if you want to put them this way. More positive outcomes, will result in new experience, which is continuity and growth. So if we continue to do the same thing, for example, if I'm learning chemistry and there is a difficult lesson that challenges my emotions, and I start responding to it by trying different solutions and using language and actions to find a way out. If I continue to do this and I grow in the process, then this is a more positive outcome. But a more negative outcome means that experience is arrested. So at this point, I don't want to do chemistry anymore. There's no growth, there's no continuity. And in this case, of course, this is something that as teachers, we don't want to happen. We always want students to continue to grow and to continue to learn. Okay, so what happens when a new experience happens, and when you continue and grow in learning, another experience will happen. We'll go back to emergent outcome, and then the cycle will continue. So this shows you that learning is a process. It doesn't stop at one point. In fact, every experience creates another experience, and we continue to learn. So that's Dewey's theory and how learning can happen. So using experiential learning theories in your English language classroom, why should we use them and where can we use them? Some of the benefits, of course, these benefits are based on my own research as a university professor, but they are also based on experience that I've done some projects for some educational institutions that we collected information of the benefits of using these as opposed to not using them. And of course, the whole thing was based on experience. So some of the benefits that I found out were very revealing, where that the learners enjoy learning through experience. So as opposed to theory, when you put things on the board and get the students to learn them by heart, or you throw information at them, then the students are not as interested. So learning becomes really enjoyable when you use experiential learning theories. And I would like you to put some of the benefits that you think learning through experience can help the students in the chat. If you have experienced any of these, we also learn together, because this is also what we're doing, is a transaction. So I'm learning from you as much as you're learning from me. So now the other benefits are more knowledge retention, enriching learners' analytical skills, real life situations that transcend the walls of the classroom. So we don't want students to be bound by the walls of the classroom. We want the learning to continue beyond those walls. And if we get them really interested, if we get their emotions touched, then we can achieve this. Language is highly regarded in this type of in these types of theories. So because we teach English language, whether it's as a second language or a first language, language, Dewey calls it, language is the tool of all tools. So language is very highly regarded. Teaching the students how to express themselves, whether in writing or speaking, is considered an action to balance one's life and to resolve complicated or unpleasant situations. Now, use of previous language applied in innovative ways results in more creativity, accepting mistakes as part of the learning process. So we said if people make mistakes, then this is a natural way, a natural, normal outcome of learning, as long as they want to continue and grow. But if they don't want to continue and grow, then the experience stops right there and the learning stops with it. So mistakes are actually a part of the learning process, because by making mistakes, the students are unlearning their previous, let's say, knowledge that doesn't serve the purpose they're learning for. So learning and unlearning is actually an endless experience in itself. So that's why we want to use those experiential learning theories in the classroom. These can be used in the classroom where, now I got into the part where we can apply them. So we can both use them in English as a second language classroom and in the first language classroom. They can be implemented at any stage. So if you want to introduce your lesson through an experience, getting the students to get up and actually do things, touch things, play roles. We will talk about the type of activities we can do in a second, but this tells you that it can be introduced to introduce new lessons, during checking for understanding, during exercises, even during assessment. So they also can be used with children and adult learners. They can be applied in the classroom and outside the classroom. So the learning process is seamless. So can you think of other situations where experiential learning can be used in the classroom? I mentioned to introduce lessons, to check for understanding, for assessment purposes. Where else can we create an experience for students to learn through? Because you see, we always talk about assessment not as finding out the knowledge of the students. Also, one of the purposes of assessment is actually to teach the students something. So assessment for learning and the experience continues. So assessment is not the end of what needs to happen. Assessment is a part of a cycle of learning. So when we teach students, when we give assessments, we need to give them with the purpose of teaching the students something or asserting some knowledge that we want them to know. Okay, so to drive an idea in the students' practical situations like bake sale, excellent. We will come to these events. I'm reading your comments. So these are some of the ways, activities that we can actually implement. Now, the where is which part of your lesson do you want to apply this in? So let's look at a scenario. Let's look at the scenario. I want you to look at this scenario and examine it with me. Then reflect on whether or not the teacher has applied the principles of experiential learning in her classroom. So we talked about creating an experience that the students can draw on what they know in the past, in the present situation, and then maybe use it in the future in a similar situation. But also, we talked about how important reflection in action, in experience is, and after the experience is. We also talked about the outcomes of experience. We said if the students make mistakes, that's fine. But the outcome becomes negative or more negative when the experience is arrested. That is, there's no growth, there's no continuity of the experience. So let's look at this scenario together. Now, Sarah teaches reading. She wants to teach her students new vocabulary about the names of animals before they start reading a text about animals. Sarah takes her students to the zoo to introduce the students to the names of the animals. Now, can you find where Sarah has applied experiential learning to begin with? Let's examine this scenario. Any ideas? That's why I stopped here. Is it in the introduction, introducing new knowledge? Is it in checking for understanding? Is it in assessment, maybe? Okay, great. So Sarah's taking the students to the zoo to do what? As an introduction, excellent, thank you very much. Yes, so she's done this to introduce the lesson as an introduction. So to make it more interesting for the students, she takes them to the zoo rather than, great, you all have great answers. Yes, it is in the introduction. It's an introduction activity. So instead of Sarah putting the names, the vocabulary on the board and asking the students, okay, repeat after me. This is a panda, this is a zebra. Instead of that, she takes them to the zoo. And then they look at the animals. The next day, she divides her students into groups and asks each group to write 5 sentences about 5 of the animals that they saw in their trip to the zoo. What is Sarah trying to do here? How does this apply? Excellent. Thank you very much. They can now see and feel, very, very interesting discussion going on in the chat. They can now see and feel and have a connection to animals, so it's more accessible to them. Do you think they will forget the names of the animals as opposed to just introducing them in the class? Never. No. Great answers. They will never forget. If you introduce the vocabulary this way, they will retain this vocabulary and remember this trip forever. Some people are in their 30s and 40s and they mention an experience like this to their children. So the next day, she divides her students into groups and asks each group to write 5 sentences about the 5 animals the students saw on their trip to the zoo. Why did she put them together? Remember when we talked about experiential learning theories, we said they happen in the real world and they also happen with do they do this on their own? Excellent. To brainstorm and share ideas. When I started at the beginning, I said that people learn in the real world with other people. So they affect each other, they collaborate. We don't learn in vacuum. People learn from other people and they learn with other people. And this is a very important aspect of experiential learning theory. So let's continue looking at the scenario. She asks them to write 5 sentences about the 5 animals they have seen during the trip. What did we talk about? Language in the theories. How important is language to these theories? Is it at all important? Experiential learning theories and language, are they connected in any way? Oh, what do you think? Yes, sure. Thank you. So they're connected. They're very much connected because in these theories, remember when I talked about Dewey's theory, I said that he considers language to be the tools of all tools. So learning will help them communicate, and learning, writing is actually a form of action, an action they take as a proof that they have learned something, that they have. Great, thank you very much. So now they wrote the 5 sentences. After they write the sentences, Sarah asks each student to write 1 sentence about one new thing they learned from their visit to the zoo. So why did she ask now each of the students, not in a group? What do you think? How does that help? Any ideas? Okay, excellent. That's a form of assessment. Assessment of what? Okay. Now, collaboration was when she divided them into groups, right? But then she asked each student to write 1 sentence about something new they learned. So why? Assessment of individuals. Excellent. Because sometimes when people work in groups, some of the shy students would depend on the other students to do the work for them. And I'm sure as teachers, we have been there, right? Right? So for Sarah to check that, yes, actually they learned in groups, they shared ideas, they wrote together, but now she needs to know that each and every one of them had a chance to give their own feedback, because this is also very important. And when each of these people participate in the classroom, then the others will listen to what they learned and they will also learn from them. So to make sure that everyone has learned what they needed to learn. So let's continue the scenario. And then share the sentence with the class when they are done. Why sharing? Why do they need to share with others? What do you think? Huh? Any ideas? Excellent. To build their confidence, to use the language, group discussion, emotional confidence, collaboration, share knowledge. Excellent. These are great answers. Learning from peers, it's all part of the experiential learning theory. And as we discussed, it's a transaction. The students learn from each other. They learn within an environment. They learn in the social world. And also as teachers in the process, we learn from them. What can we learn from this scenario? As a teacher, imagine you're Sarah, and now you're listening to the students talking. How would you learn from your students? And do teachers learn from students? Yes, they do. So what can they learn? What can Sarah learn from this situation? Because remember, we're all learning human beings. We learn from each other. So how can Sarah learn anything? I mean, assuming she knows the names of the animals, of course. Excellent, Joe. She learns their perspective. She learns their different views. I love your answers. She learns about the way they introduce themselves, how they learn. How they learn is very important, because once you know which experience actually touches your students, then you can actually do more of that to get them to open up, to learn more, to do things, and learn about their different abilities. Very, very, very good answers. So this observation, as you said, as you mentioned, is very important for her to learn about her students, the things they like, the environments they learn in, and the information the students share amongst themselves also. And also it gives her the chance to correct anything if the student didn't get it right? Because once she hears the answers and the sharing and what's going on in the class, sometimes as teachers, we learn that we need to explain more, to go deeper. It's a form of feedback for Sarah, because this will help her adjust her ways if needed. Okay, feedback for the teacher. Excellent. Thank you very much. So examples of the activities that we can implement in the classroom. There are multimodal projects. For example, if you're teaching a literature class, you let the students create multimedia presentation, incorporating visuals, audio, video elements to express their understanding. This creates a very appealing environment for creativity and critical thinking, that you would be amazed how different your classroom will turn into. So this approach caters to different learning styles and enhances comprehension. People learn in different ways, as we know, and the more experiences we put our students through, the more learning that will happen in the classroom. So for English as a second language teacher, you can engage the students in creative activities like painting, drawing, crafting, discuss the process in English, enhance vocabulary related to the colors, shapes, and artistic techniques. So you can discuss the shapes, the colors, the new vocabulary, the process itself. Ask them after they finish to write one paragraph about how they went about making those shapes, creating these things. They would love to write about this because they've experienced it. And at the same time, they will reflect on what they did. So by doing this, you're actually applying two principles of the experiential learning theories. That is giving them the chance to do their own thing, to do the actions they like the most, giving them the freedom, and at the same time, you are asking them to reflect on what they did. Okay, so examples of activities in the classroom and storytelling. So you invite a guest speaker, for example, instead of saying, let's assume, okay, we want to talk about democracy today. So instead of talking about democracy, invite someone to talk to them about democracy, someone who studies democracy or who practices it. So invite guest speakers, storytellers to share their experiences and narratives. The students can share also personal stories, real life illustrations. Thank you very much. Storytelling fosters empathy and understanding. So instead of having a classroom that is dry, that is full of theory, you can actually have a classroom that is full of life, full of experiences that the students will never forget. Now, some teachers argue that applying this principle actually makes the teacher's life harder, because those activities are harder to manage and harder to implement, if you want. but the learning that you will get after planning, the planning stage is a bit more difficult because it needs a lot of creativity on the teacher's part. But if you implement those experiences in the classroom, then I can guarantee that your classroom will be more enjoyable. Your students will listen to you. You have more of classroom management because they're enjoying what they're doing. And also you will have more learning retention. Okay, so now interactive games can also include literary themes, historical context, or other topics. The students can assume different roles, for example, so role playing is very important. Instead of just asking them, what did this certain historical character do, have them act that historical character, have them be them, experience how it feels. And they will appreciate this, they will remember this, and they will enjoy your class a lot more. Okay, so yes, a lot of you are saying that they love role playing. There are a lot of exercises that teachers can do in the classroom that will help also encourage this creativity in the students, encourage reflection, talking, discussing things after they happen. What did you learn today? Why did we do this? What do you think about what happened? Asking questions and having them discuss the answers together will actually be the core of implementing experiential learning theories. So you will have the temporal, what happened in the past, how it's affecting their experience in the classroom, and how it will affect it outside in the future or inside the classroom. This all makes up the learning experience. Okay, so I wanted actually to share with you. Of course, you can find me at excedia.net, or you can find me on ResearchGate or on LinkedIn. But before I would like to share with you some of the activities that are on the handouts, because I feel that those will be very, very relevant to applying the theories in the classroom. And yes, I'm talking about the theory, but I also care a lot that the teachers attending today can apply those theories. So let me just try to share the handout that I think will be ready, given to you. And you can share with me also some of the things you do in your classroom. Of course, I'm here, I have a lot of these activities. So let's look at some of them. Role playing, as some of you said. Literary journals, has anyone applied this before? Would like to hear your feedback about journals, students writing journals. Thank you very much. Okay, so I would really like to know if you have applied any of these before. Simulations, if you have used VR in the classroom, virtual reality VRs. They put also the students into an experience, and then these are technology based. If you don't have the space or the ability, because sometimes you know, trips are expensive and not everyone can do that. So if you have a VR, it's very useful in the classroom. There are cooking classes, for example, if you want to teach a process of how people can prepare things, or sometimes we teach writing. So the process of doing something. If you cook in the classroom, you want to teach them transitions, first, second, third, and so on. They will never forget such experiences. Service learning, volunteering, All these are activities that can be carried out in the classroom and outside the classroom.
Okay, thank you so much. That was so super interesting. I wanted to come in and round off and take some of the questions from the audience, but I just lost connectivity for a moment, so I'm back. But thank you. That was so interesting, and really interesting what you're saying about the theory behind something that I think we often as teachers feel instinctively is right. You know, that our students learn by doing, and we need to do these things. So it's great to know that. And also to think about the importance of social, the social element of learning and reflection in this. So thank you so much, really interesting. We've got some questions that have come through both from the Facebook audience and the chat.
Sure.
So let's have a look what we've got here. Okay, so there's a question here in the Q&A from Sultan. How can we apply journals to students aged between 15 and 17? Have you got any tips for using journals?
Yes. Well, you can start explaining what a journal is at the beginning of the academic year, and then train them first on how to write journals. And then as you go, try to go, depending on the lesson, I'm assuming it's an English for a second language class, then depending on the lesson, you need to put them through an experience like the scenario I shared about Sarah taking them on a field trip, for example, or you can do some cooking in the class if you're doing a process. You can do role playing and then ask them to reflect in their journals. So write about the experience they've been through, or write through the experience. So write some of the things in the classroom as notes to remember later on, and even put pictures, describe, record a song, whatever it takes for them to actually be able to express themselves, and then write about all that. How did you feel? How was it like? What did you learn?
Yeah,
and they'd be
great.
more willing to do that.
Yeah. So how often would you ask them to write like that? Would you ask them after like one lesson, or after a whole project, or what's the ideal?
That depends on the level of the students, one, the age of the students, and whether they are English as a second language student or first language speakers of English. So it all depends on what the type of students you have. The main thing is that you need to put them through an experience, make it enjoyable, make it a little bit challenging, because you need to disrupt this order so they have emotions and they start learning and they need a solution and they look forward to getting out of a confusing situation. Mm-hmm. So by making making sure that you do this while making this experience social with other people, and making sure that you get them to reflect on it at the end. These are the main principles.
Okay. Right. Okay. So I love that these key messages about building in time for reflection. And then talking about kind of these different elements and how different students respond. There's a question here from Chitra Dave that says some students are shy, and you mentioned that in your talk. Some students are shy and don't engage actively in group activities. How can we help them in such cases?
Again, because learning starts in emotions, you need to find out what triggers that special emotion in them that they want to learn. So for example, I had a student who I used to teach writing, and she would tell me I would never write. I never, ever enjoy writing. So she was very excited about, and she would usually miss her writing homework. So I asked her, she was mentioning something about her sister's wedding. So I said, come on, now I want you to write me a complete plan of how you're going to manage this wedding. Like, you know, suddenly she was chasing me all over the place, showing me her writings, and it continued for a week. So she would be writing every day to show me that, because this is something that she feels strongly about. But if I asked her to write, for example, about fossils in the sea or something else, she would be disinterested. So the first thing, and when I mentioned the scenario of Sarah, I said that engaging with our students in a social atmosphere makes the teacher learn more about what the students enjoy the most. So as we need to teach them, we also need to learn about them first.
Yeah.
So if you learn more about your students, you'll learn more about how to engage them.
Yeah, that's a really important tip. That's a really good tip, I think, isn't it? About trying to find topics that are interesting personally to students, and for the shy students, writing can be a really good way of establishing that relationship. There's a kind of communication or dialogue going on between just you and the student,
Yes.
and you can find out those personal interest topics. Okay, thank you. That's a really nice story. Let's have a look what else we've got. So there's somebody asking about debates here. Would you include that in experiential learning?
Absolutely. Yes. Yes, okay. Debates are very important, because debates also give this this environment for students to express themselves. And we talked about language and the importance of language in the students expressing themselves and building their knowledge, because we said that this is one of the most important tools of expressing what they learned also, and gaining more knowledge. So yes, debate, by all means, debate, role playing, acting out, inviting people from other places to speak to them, narratives, stories, going out on field trips. These are all good ways to implement experiential learning theories, but above all, reflection. So after you put them through this experience, it's very important to get them to reflect on what they've done, because without reflection, there is no knowledge. We don't develop our knowledge. They must reflect. So that's
so interesting. That's the big thing I've learned today, is that it's not enough just to experience, but it's also the reflection.
Yes.
Okay, so just briefly on that, do you have any recommended rules for a debate? We've got this person asking about how you actually set up a debate in class.
Okay, the first very important thing is to find a topic they're interested in, obviously, because unless they're really interested in the topic, they would not debate about it. So it's always good to remind them of accepting the other person's point of view. So when they debate, there are rules for debate. So first we teach them what a debate is, how to debate like a civilized person, and then we get a very, if you want, a very challenging topic that some of the students agree with, some of the students don't agree with, and then we get them to debate. The main thing that I would say is very, very important is to find that topic. So to find what really appeals to your students, and then they will respond in ways that you would be surprised at. Yeah. They will amaze you. They will inspire you.
Yeah. And there's a question here about age. I mean, I think lots of people have been asking about young learners, children and teenagers. Can experiential learning also be relevant for older learners, for adults?
Yes, yes, by all means. The older learners would love to, you would look at them and you would think, no, they're old, we cannot do this with them. But they actually miss this part in their learning. Your class will be the special class, because the other teachers assume, you know, theory. I mean, anyone, even for us, if I just now threw information at you without asking you questions, without including you, without including your experiences, you would be bored. You would be, people need this social aspect to be included, to be heard, to express their knowledge, to share, to correct their knowledge. If there's anything wrong with it, then someone else can help you out. If we don't give people the chance to express themselves, to be a part of the learning process, then they lose interest. It's as simple as that. Yeah. So it's very important to create this space of social, situated reflection, that people would really feel included and heard.
Yeah, definitely. And do you, so Anush here is asking, what would be the best method to help the student to overcome psychological barriers, for example, in a debate or to participate in a group discussion? And I'm just wondering if you sometimes need to persuade students that and share some of the theory. Do you ever tell them, look, the reason we're doing this is because it really works, and when you do things you learn better? And do you share that with your students?
I first try to apply it, so for them to see, again, applying things, having them experience it. Once they experience this, they don't want anything else. This is all what they want. They do well with their studies. The assessment proves this. I've done many projects that we measured the students' performance before the experiential learning theories were applied in the teacher's practice, and then afterwards. And I will not be able to share the specific numbers, but the difference was huge.
Right.
The difference was huge, and the assessment proved it at the end. Right. And the students loved it. They enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And this is very important.
So do you think experiential learning is better for some types of learner than others?
I think it all depends on the teacher. So if the teacher can find out what her students are interested in, what their learning styles are, what needs to be done to get them to be a part of this learning atmosphere, then she will be able to achieve whatever she wants to achieve. And it's always important to get them to reflect. Again, reflection is very important, because while they reflect, the teacher learns also what needs to be fixed, if you want, how to adjust her teaching to meet the needs of those students. So
yes, it's kind of a continuous loop, feedback loop or dialogue. Yeah,
exactly. Excellent, Joe. You expressed it in a very clear. It's a spiral that is actually going on. It's a spiral of learning that happens also between the teacher and the students. We tend to think, you know, and these are the old theories that the teacher takes information from her brain or his brain and puts them in the brain of the students. Of course, this is very outdated way of thinking about the students. Of course, some other people still use it, and it's okay to use it, but not fully. But we also need to view ourselves as learners. And this is what this theory also advances, that as a teacher, you're not only teaching, it's a transaction, you're actually learning and you're modifying.
I love that. I love that. Well, thank you so much. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, but let's finish on that. I love that we're also learners, and it's this kind of joint process together. Yeah. So Manal, thank you so much. That was so interesting. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you very much, Joe.
Thank you to everybody Good, I'm glad you enjoyed it. I know our audience have as well. Thank you to everybody that's attended the webinars today. Thank you as well to our team, Melissa, and also to our moderators on Facebook, to Karen and Wiam. Thank you so much. So join us soon. Keep an eye out for the next mini event in December. We've also got a mini event on a special climate action in the classroom mini event coming up at the end of this month. So keep an eye on the website for what's coming up. And thank you, everybody. We'll send you I just need to correct something on the certificate, so we'll send those to you all by email. Okay, don't worry, everything is on its way to you after this. Okay, thank you. See you all soon.
Bye.